Morning, everybody. David Shapiro here with another video. By popular demand, we are going to explore the reasons, 5 reasons, that GPT-4 will probably be disappointing. So, where did all this start? Sam Altman, the CEO and co-founder of OpenAI, was recently on an interview, and straight from his own mouth, he said, the GPT-4 rumor mill is a ridiculous thing. I don't know where it all comes from. It's obviously pretty silly. People are begging to be disappointed, and they will be. The hype is just like, we don't have an actual AGI, and that's sort of what's expected of us. So this was kind of like the shot heard around the world. So what's he referring to? First, there's this meme that has been circulating on Twitter for probably at least a year in various formats. Basically, the claim is that GPT-4 will be 100 trillion parameters. And there's all kinds of jokes, like people have just taken it and run with it. One of my favorite ones was someone said something to the effect of like, my wife's boyfriend's boss has seen GPT-4 and it blah, 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 so on and so forth. Still, straight from the man himself, Sam Altman, he said that it will be disappointing, or people are begging to be disappointed, and that he doesn't have, and that they don't have AGI. So let's unpack this. What's going on? Where why would he use that word disappointing? So first, it seems like the 100 trillion parameters is just that's not happening. I even had someone point out that Chinchilla, a competing large language model, outperforms GPT-3 on some benchmarks, but it's only 70 billion parameters. So it's entirely possible that GPT-4 could be smaller. It could be data optimized and compute optimized. So it might be smaller. Who knows? So the parameter count, we have no idea, but that's only one component of what makes a large language model good or useful. So his comment about AGI was actually, to me, more interesting, rather than commenting on memes or implying something about parameter counts. So let's go through 5 reasons that I personally think that GPT-4 might be disappointing to me and probably to you. Hence, why are you watching this? So reason number 1 is that development is slowing down. GPT-1 first came out in June 2018. So it's been less than 4 years. It's been about 3.5 years since this whole thing got started, which in the grand scheme of things is a very short period of time. GPT-2 came out 9 months later. So in the span of 9 months, they went up one entire generation. GPT-3 came out 16 months after that. So roughly doubled, right? 9 months, 16 months. And then, so that was June of 2020. And here we are where GPT 3.5 and ChatGPT came out at the end of last year, which was a total of 30 months of development time. And that's not even to get to GPT-4, that's just GPT 3.5. So that was a very small, in the grand scheme of things, a very small incremental change, or improvement rather, with no structural or new unique capabilities. Now, that being said, those incremental improvements enabled a technology like ChatGPT. They got better at fine-tuning, the window size got bigger, and so that makes it more useful, but it's not fundamentally any different. So with this slowing down of development time, this leads to the possibility that maybe AI is not growing exponentially. Maybe it follows an S-curve or a sigmoid curve, which if that is true, then we are at a point of diminishing returns and the whole thing is slowing down, which, by the way, all of science is slowing down. I have quite a few science friends, and they will say like, yeah, we publish papers today that are tiny, tiny improvements over past papers. Science as a whole is slowing down, and it's entirely possible that AI is also slowing down. So the takeaway from this is, what if the advancement of AI is more like in the Star Wars universe, where droids are smart, but they're never going to be human level smart, even after thousands of years of development? If we have a sigmoid growth curve of the advancement of machine intelligence, we could be looking at that future. It's entirely possible. Now, this is extrapolating a really big thing from just a couple data points. So obviously take this with a big giant grain of salt. Reason number 2 that GPT-4 might be disappointing is that it's still only text. When you look at the proportions that we take in, you and me, humans and other animals, and even robots, right, that take in information about the world, the vast majority of our information is visual, and then hearing, and then touch, and taste, and smell, right? So we have all kinds of senses, which GPT doesn't even really touch. GPT only has a hypothetical understanding of these senses. And so we have, Whisper and Dolly, and, they announced that video is coming. But there is so much information about the world that is not being integrated by these models. And so we're basically just getting more of the same. That's kind of all there is to say about it. And I know that way back in my first book, Natural Language Cognitive Architecture, I did say that that natural language was sufficient for AGI. But the implication is that you also have other models to help integrate real world information such as vision and audio into that, because the natural language cognition, a new term that I just invented, NLC, is able to perform cognitive operations on that information, but you still need to get that information into the model from the outside world. That being said, we do still need better models. We do need better vision models and audio models, both for inferencing the world, but also generating. We're getting pretty good with voice synthesis, but there's still a long ways to go. Anyways, I'm chasing down rabbits. So another way of looking at this, it's not just a matter of senses. It's a matter of also just humans are the most intelligent thing that we have. So if you just look at how we process information in our brain, language is only one part of that, right? And it's not even, it's not even on this this pie chart. That being said, language is an important and diffuse part of our neural processing. That being said, there is so much other kinds of processing that happens in our brains that gives us general intelligence, right? And so when you look at that, like you say, okay, humans are our best model of strong intelligence. What does the LLM do, right? There is some evidence that LLMs have, theory of mind and planning and anticipation and that sort of stuff. But these are only very small components of a greater whole. And so this is another reason that I think GPT-4 will be disappointing. Specifically, it doesn't add up to AGI. Reason number 3 that it's disappointing, it's not R2-D2 yet. Thanks to fiction, specifically science fiction, we all have pretty good ideas as to what we want robots and AGI to look like. Now, whether or not you classify R2-D2 as an AGI is entirely up to you. AGI is a terrible definition. It's a pretty useless term. And, I say that often, whatever, don't need to get on that soapbox. But point being is that GPT-4, no matter how powerful it is, it would only be a component of AGI. It would only be a component of R2-D2. You still need the body. You still need an architecture. You still need blah, 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 blah. There's all kinds of stuff that you still need. So with big picture thinking, like, let's take a really big step back for just a second. You and I, the people that are lost in the weeds of large language models and AI, we kind of sometimes forget to look at the forest for the trees. And so what is the goal here, right? If you take a big step back, it's like, okay, you have a language model. That's certainly not AI. No matter how good the language model, not AGI, sorry. No matter how good the language model is, it will never be AGI in and of itself. So the rhetorical question is, like, what is the goal here? Like, what do we actually want to achieve? And the reason that I keep saying that AGI is a useless term is because, one, it's poorly defined, and the goalposts keep moving. Some people seem to expect that it's not going to be AGI until it is a world brain and supersedes every single human on the planet. To me, that would be ASI, or artificial superintelligence. And that's not criticizing any individual, but just I want to make the observation that AGI is like a unicorn, right? We're chasing something that doesn't exist. We're chasing the dragon. So it's kind of a useless term, which is another reason like GPT-4 will be disappointing, because nothing will ever achieve AGI because the goalposts keep moving. Reason number 4 that GPT-4 will be disappointing. This is probably my spiciest take, depending on what your profession is. Scale is not all you need. So for those not in the know, there's been this like battle cry almost for the last couple of years, especially with the progression from GPT-1 to 2 to 3, where it's like scale is all you need. That's what people were saying, because it just seemed like the more parameters you added and the more data you threw at it, the smarter it got. Well, here's the thing. GPT-3 was already trained on like 200 lifetimes worth of text. So there's only so much more text you can read, right, before it starts becoming redundant. Sure, there's probably a little bit newer news that it can read, maybe some updated Wikipedia articles, a few new scientific papers, but once you have a really good understanding of the world, doubling the amount of data isn't going to change that much. There's only so much fundamental information about the universe that is available through text, right? As I pointed out earlier, there's other modalities that we haven't even begun to integrate. And so scale is not all you need. Furthermore, people have not really put that much research into cognitive architecture. There is a reason that me, little old me, an individual independent researcher, is playing in the same sandbox as like Jan LeCun. And that is because there are so few people working on the concept of cognitive architecture. And the biggest part of the problem, this will be a little bit soapboxy. So one of the biggest problems is that there's a little bit of ego, and pot calls kettle black. I know that I'm egotistical about this, but the purists, that's too much of a loaded term. The specialists, I'll use that word. The people who specialize in algorithmic improvements and math and loss functions and deep neural network design, they don't see cognitive architecture as a legitimate field of research. They say, oh, well, that's just an integration problem. I'm not a systems engineer. You're a systems engineer. You go integrate it with other systems. And I actually literally had a researcher at a major university tell me, like when I was talking about cognitive architecture, he's like, oh, that's just an ensemble of experts. He just brushed it off like, oh, that's not even useful. And it's like, no, cognitive architecture is actually a much more complete theory. And so there's this really, really deep schism. One, people aren't just not putting in the effort to cognitive architecture, but also there's a lot of prejudice against it for whatever reason. And so because of that, and because we're seeing these diminishing returns for scale is not all you need, a monolithic deep neural network will never be AGI. Like, I stake my career on that. It could end up with really, really impressive abilities, but you need specialized motor control systems. You need specialized memory systems. You need offline learning systems. There's all kinds of problems. You need semantic search. There's all kinds of problems that you just cannot solve just with a deep neural network. And so this is the biggest thing that's missing in my mind from the active research. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox now. Reason number 5, overpromising and under-delivering. So if you go to the OpenAI website and look at their about, right at the top, it says, our mission is to ensure that artificial general intelligence benefits all of humanity. And then Sam Altman on an interview says, we don't have an actual AGI, and that's sort of what's expected of us. It's like, well, yeah, but that's because that's what you said. Like you set that expectation. And now that being said, I know that I and others are, critical of OpenAI. I don't want to undersell the value that they have added to the world with their research into large language models. But that being said, there is a disconnect between what Sam said on stage or in an interview and what the official mission statement of OpenAI is. So to unpack that a little bit further, Microsoft is the biggest partner of OpenAI, and Microsoft is a mature enterprise business software company. So they, as a publicly traded company, they put profit and adding value to the market above all else, research is the means to that end. OpenAI started as a nonprofit where they kind of stumbled into creating value, and then they pivoted to trying to be a for-profit company. So they have not fully, in my opinion, take it for what it's worth. I'm not a venture capitalist or anything. I'm just a dude with an internet connection. In my opinion, OpenAI has not yet figured out how to be an enterprise company. They're small, they're growing. I think Sam said recently there's like 375 employees. In the grand scheme of things, that is a small company. OpenAI is a tiny company compared to the like tens of thousands of employees that Microsoft and Google and Amazon have. And so they are very, very small. They are still learning to be a for-profit company. And so the OpenAI, the nonprofit, still exists. And the for-profit OpenAI version is a wholly owned subsidiary of the nonprofit. And it's a capped profit company. Not sure about the details of that. Anyways, point being is that Microsoft, their primary partner, puts creating customer value above all else. That is how Microsoft got big and stays big, is by creating value for customers. OpenAI, they are still focused on more lofty, idealistic ambitions and not necessarily creating value for individuals. And that's because their goal is, as I said earlier, to create AGI, but that's kind of like chasing a unicorn. So this is where I think a big part of the disappointment comes in, is OpenAI, like the left hand isn't really fully talking to the right hand, so to speak. So in conclusion, GPT-4 is just going to be more of the same as we got with GPT-3, just a little bit better. And so to recap the 5 reasons, the development of LLMs is clearly slowing down, indicating that we've hit a point of diminishing returns, meaning we're going to need to switch to multimodal models or different kinds of models, or in my opinion, invest more in cognitive architectures. Number 2, GPT-4 will be text only. Sorry, I kind of bled these two together, which still leaves out the vast majority of information about the world. Visual, auditory, sense of touch, sense of balance, all kinds of information streams are just not available yet until we have more kinds of models. Number 3, it's only a component of the droids or whatever it is that we want. It's not, it's a necessary but not sufficient component, right? If you want a Ferrari, you need the engine, but you also need the body and the wheels. So the way that I look at it is that large language models are just the engine or part of the engine for what will eventually be considered AGI. Reason number 4, scale is not all you need. You also need a theory of cognition or a cognitive architecture to wrap around it. There's a common theme here. And number 5 is OpenAI just simply needs more business acumen, right? You definitely keep your core values. I will be the first one to say that having a lofty and ambitious purpose is absolutely necessary, but you also need to support that with better business acumen. Okay, thank you for watching. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or Patreon. You might have noticed that I disabled comments, and that's just because people on the internet can be mean, and it's not a good use of my time. So if you really have something meaningful to say, connect with me on LinkedIn or Patreon. I pay much more attention to those platforms. Thanks for watching.